The following podcast is brought to you exclusively by the Rad Rob Radio Network.
Welcome to the Leadership Evolution Podcast, where we explore what happens after the build. I'm Luke Mickelson, founder, leader, and someone who's walked through the challenges of growing an organization, letting go, and learning how to lead in a completely new way. This podcast is for founders, executives, and leaders who are navigating growth, identity, and the tension between control and legacy. Because building something great is only the beginning. Learning how to evolve with it, that's the real work. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Leadership Evolution Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Mickelson, and I am so excited, guys, to see the man, the myth, the legend, and a very good friend of mine, Chris Stout, join us today. Chris, how you doing, brother?
Dude, I'm doing great. Getting on a call with you couldn't make my day better.
Good, man. I like that. Listen, everybody, I'm gonna read his bio later on, but Chris is one of those guys. I met him. Not surprisingly, at our CNN Heroes. We were both nominated the same year in 2018 to be a CNN hero, and he is more than I don't know if this is an insult or not, more than the title itself. I don't know how would you raise this? Listen, let me be real. I'm a farm kid from Idaho. He's from Kansas City. What we're doing on CNN Heroes, you got me, but we were on there. So he's a great dude. And I want to dive in, hear your story, learn about Chris Stout. We want to talk about being such a great leader. You know, what are some of the challenges, evolutions that you went through and your business, and how you dealt with that. But first, let's talk about Chris. Give us the lowdown of Mr. Stout.
Man, Luke, I'm humbled dude. That CNN Heroes thing, it opened up so many doors and created so many friendships, man. Like it, just to be in the same room as, everybody that's doing all those crazy things, dude, it's humbling. You know how it is, dude. You're thinking, I'm just doing what needs to be done. And then, they put you in a space and you look at all this other insane work that people are doing and the impact. And it's just like, bro, dude, I don't know if I belong here type thing. And then, you move on from it and it's like, I mean, dude, we've stayed close. We text and, our families have connected. And, dude, it's like I said, man, sure, the value was, we got recognized, that's the thing. But I tell you, the best thing I took from it was my friendships, with all of you guys. So, but man, what am I doing, dude? I'm just working, man. Like, I think when we all hit an age where we're balancing work and family and, I was just having a conversation with a buddy today that started an organization 6 years ago. And we were having a conversation about how he's changed in 6 years. And I kind of feel like, if you were to talk to me 6 years ago, man, my life was way different. And and then I've evolved to this thing where, listen, man, I love being at home every day when my kid gets home from school. That's like the best part. I look at like the work I do now and like how I connect with people. Somebody could offer me $10 million a year, but if it required me to not be at home, like if it took me away from that, I'd be like, hard pass. You know what I mean? So it's crazy how, because even from when we met, like how different my life has been. And I love it, man. I love, watching the kids grow up and being a part of that. And, it's definitely back whenever I started that stuff, I was not around. Like it was busy, but yeah, dude, all things are good, man. Just
that's awesome.
Living the dream.
So when we met, right? We met because we're both on the CNN Hero, and you had started an organization called VCP. You want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd started a nonprofit that builds tiny houses for homeless Veterans Community Project, and we were blessed to have the right mixture of who we served and how we did it, to where it was embraced by the community and then eventually the nation. Probably a lot like what you've done. And, it was a thing that just, I don't know, back then there's so much red tape in how you got services for vets, and the idea behind it had nothing to do with tiny houses. It was, how do we get people help when they need help? Yeah. And, I just took that and ran.
I mean, and you served, right? You were in the service, right?
Yeah. Yep. Deployed to Afghanistan, was injured overseas, medically retired, and I came back, and how I got into this space altogether was kind of weird. Like, I had a mobility issue, and I had been volunteering for this nonprofit that gave Segways to veterans, called Segs for Vets. They're based in St. Louis, and the idea is that not everybody needs to be in a wheelchair to have access to mobility. Like, guys like me, I could stand, and there was this benefit, right? Like, I could look people in the eye, and people weren't always trying to help me, because I was in a wheelchair, or one of those little rascal things going around Walmart or whatever, right? Like, nobody was grabbing stuff off the shelf for me. So it was this way to help people. And I remember I came back from like volunteering at an event, and my wife's like, gosh, you seem to really like that. There's this energy. And then that kind of like triggered my brain. I'm like, all right, well, maybe I'll start working with vets. And in Kansas City, there's a program called 211, and it's everywhere across the country. And if you haven't heard of it, Luke, it's really cool. And 211 is like a 911 for community resources. It covers about 98% of the country. Dude, you could call 211 right now, and you could say, hey, I need help paying my light bill. And they would connect you with resources that help with that. Or I need a dentist for free, or I can't pay my rent. And they would they'd ask you some questions, like how many kids you got, your income, that stuff. They're like, oh, well, this organization helps with that, right? So they're kind of like a community guide for nonprofits.
Wow.
And I got a job there taking all veteran calls. And so anytime a veteran would call, I'd be working with them, try to get housing, or 9 times out of 10, it was housing. And that's really how VCP started. I was working there, and I learned that all of these programs had all these hurdles to jump through. And these folks facing homelessness in their car, under a bridge, wherever it was, dude, they're just not in a place to have to do X, Y, and Z before they get, housing. So, dude, it was one weekend that it was like Memorial Day weekend, and a guy that, I would refer people to, his name was Kevin. He's the guy that started VCP with me. I would refer people to his organization. He came over to the house, and we were kind of, we were having a couple drinks and talking about like how the system's broken. He and I had taken a vet out of their apartment, put him in the shelter for 24 hours so he would qualify. Now, backstory on that, he only needed like $220 to not be evicted. There was no program funding. So in that space, there's program funding for, it's called rapid rehousing. So if you're on the street, and then homeless prevention. So 80% of the money is rapid rehousing, and 20% of the money is homeless prevention, which is crazy to me. So we had put him in a shelter so that he would qualify for the money. In that time, his landlord threw all this stuff out, and he ended up becoming homeless anyways. And so it cost us thousands in a U-Haul, storage, getting his service dog that had been picked up by the city, back. And we were complaining about it. Like, the system's broken, it's dumb. And he had this girlfriend that she's like, well, if you guys could do it better. I'm like, okay.
Hold my beer, right?
Dude, literally, that's how it went. And every Monday we started meeting at this place called Harry's Country Club in Kansas City. And we did it over beer, and we were just writing down notes. Like, what would we do? Tiny houses weren't even like a thing. Like, Kansas City had like 30 school buildings at the time. And we're like, oh, we could get one of those and create housing there. And
really? So it wasn't a tiny home from beginning view.
No, dude. That was, I didn't even know what the heck the tiny house was. Like, we going through these meetings, I connected with a realtor, and he got us a list of these schools, and then the school district didn't want to give them up. They were like selling them for millions and millions of dollars, which we didn't have because we were just two guys. And we went to a meeting with the city council person, and she'd been watching some HGTV or something. She's like, have you guys heard of tiny houses? And so we grabbed our phones and Googled it. I'm like, oh, dude, that could work. And we started doing research and went and visited a couple of places like in Seattle and upstate New York and Texas, and to just kind of see what was out there. And those places were cool, and they were working in their communities, very different than what we did because those were self-governed. Those weren't veteran specific. But we kind of took that idea and then talked the city into giving us 5 acres and then hired a civil engineer. And it didn't take us long to figure out why they gave us that land. Is because it was crap and it had been empty for a long time, because it took way more to develop it than, dude, we went into it, we got that land, we're like, oh, we'll have houses in 6 months.
Yeah.
Never built a house before, dude, ever.
That's pretty good of you.
Yeah. And I remember the civil engineers just laughing. And every time I see him, I run into him at Target or whatever. He's like, dude, you remember that time you said we'd have houses in 6 months? I'm like, dude, I get it. I was an idiot. I had no idea. So yeah, dude, that's how it all came about, man. And
well, isn't it strange? Like, I get it. I had no business starting a nonprofit. I had no idea what I was doing. Right. I had an entrepreneur spirit about me. I loved doing that. And I know I could lead an organization, but to start a nonprofit, I mean, there is and especially in the space that you were in, there's some red tape that you didn't even know you had to deal with or even know it was there until you're staring at it in the face. Right.
Dude, the funding resources in that space were so restricted. And back then the VA, and they're a lot better now, but the VA was like, oh, you have to have served 180 days honorably. Like you had to, like your service had to. So one of the things that we'd run into this guy that had served 12 years, he had 3 combat deployments, ends up getting a DUI, likely self-medicating because of post-traumatic stress.
Sure.
Gets put out of the military, other than honorable, discharged. So 12 years of service. He was a Purple Heart recipient. Qualified for nothing. And we're like, dude, that's garbage. Like, what are we doing? Because of one drinking incident, we're gonna pretend like the other 12 years, the 3 deployments,
didn't happen. Yeah.
So when we went into it, we're like, all right, we're not gonna have red tape. If you served, regardless of your discharge status, the length of service, we're gonna help you as best we can. And it evolved, and people really embraced that whole thing. And to your point, man, I had no business starting a nonprofit. Like, people all the time were like, well, what's your experience? Did you go to school for business? I'm like, no, dude, I think military people, especially those that have been deployed and have been in for any significant amount of time, there's no plan B. Like, it's plan A, and you're going to make it work. And Evan and I, we really embraced that whole thing. We're like, this is not an option.
Right.
We're already here. We've already decided to start it. This is what's happening.
What, Chris, what did that take? Like, as you look back and I look back on my start story too. I mean, what did that take, both personally, mentally, like even your character? What did it take to start something like that?
Well, dude, we all have to feed our families, right?
Yeah. And
I was working at another nonprofit that didn't love the fact that I was on the news, that I was talking about another program. Now, mind you, I had brought this up to that nonprofit and said, hey, this would be a great program for you to consume. It's going to be great. We raised a little bit of money at that time. And all of a sudden they're like, hey, you can't work for us and do that. So I had to make a choice. And dude, it was tough because my wife's a teacher, so she's not bringing in the big bucks. Man, at that time we had 3 teenagers, all about the high school age, like, probably at the most expensive point in their lives.
Yeah, in the middle of it. That's right.
Sports and all that stuff. And, and then I'm telling my wife that I want to start this nonprofit. And thank God that I had her, because everybody else was like, this is dumb. Like, what are you doing? Like, you got the money. You can't raise money. You don't even know how to raise money. You're not a fundraiser.
All right.
And we didn't, dude. We had no clue. And she, if it hadn't been for her, dude, it wouldn't have. Dude, we borrowed against our house multiple times. Like, we leveraged our house for the infrastructure on the land. We leveraged our house and our personal credit to buy all these demo houses, because the organization had money then. I'm like, oh, but I got credit. We'll figure it out. We'll raise the money. And it took a lot. Like, I remember the first time I went and asked her to sign the bank document. And and just you could see the stress and like the tears and her reluctance in doing it, but she did it because she believed in it. I mean, I remember her telling me, she goes, if this fails, we're not even going to have a tiny house to live in.
Oh my gosh, that's probably true.
Point blank said it. She's like, this doesn't work.
Wow.
We lose our home. Like and we, at the time we were in a position where we were blessed, to where we had a bunch of equity in our house, and it worked out. Like, dude, but I think it worked out because she was all like, when she came all in, I was all in, and then there was no failure. Like, dude, I'm not gonna I can't let my family become homeless because so, and then the sacrifice of getting a start. Dude, I worked a regular job, and then after that job, I would go and do these networking events and connection events. And dude, I feel like I gained 80 pounds because all they serve is craft beer and junk food at these networking things. I got so big, man. It was crazy. If you look at my before I started, and then like that second year, dude, I was a big guy. And I attribute it all to Boulevard Wheat, because that's what they serve at 99% of Kansas City events, and just junk food, and
probably a little stress too.
Dude,
just a little, right?
Not a lot of gray, bro, but I ain't that old, man. I'll tell you right now.
Oh shoot!
And it was all that stuff. It was the stress of trying to make it work, and and as we grew, we knew that a little back up. We had a guy that worked for a foundation in town, and we would always set up meetings at 4. Kevin and I both we couldn't meet before 4 because we had our other jobs. We had real jobs. Mm-hmm. And he figured it out after like the third time. He's like, hey, why do we always meet at 4? We can't wait for lunch. Like, bro, we have other jobs. He's like, wait, what? He didn't realize that, and by this point we had land and we had a design, we had a lot of stuff, but we were still working other jobs. And he's like, all right, what's it take for you guys to not do that? What do I need to write a check for 6 months of your salary?
Wow.
You guys. And dude, honestly, that was the springboard moment for us. Like, that was like, we literally resigned and we stopped working our other stuff and we went all in, and we knew we had 6 months. It was a clock, and it didn't take long to figure out, man, every time we make the news, we get about 20 grand in cash. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was one of those things. It's like, okay, we made really good friends with the local news and the reporters. And, I remember I was able to Dia, she was one of the KCTV5, I think is where she was at. And she was one of the reporters there, gave me her number. And just over the years, she's watched Colin grow from like a car seat to a teenager, and she's no longer in Kansas City. But it's cool to I remember I could text her and be like, hey, Dia, we're getting ready to meet with the mayor. And then she'd catch us when we're walking out. She'd tell us about the meeting with the mayor, and, and that would give a little infusion of cash. And she was really that catalyst for, our recognition and kind of, dude, when that 6 months started coming to an end, and, we were like, shit, we got to figure out where's our money coming from. It was people like her that really stepped up and made sure that we got in the forefront, and things started to kind of fall into place.
Well, before we dive into that, I did want to make one point that I think is very interesting as you meet with leaders and meet with founders, right? There's the builds part and stage of your foundation, right? And that build part, I'm glad you shared what you did, because a lot of people forget, even within like my own organization, yours as well, and others. People forget the sacrifice and probably don't even appreciate the sacrifice that founders go through in the very beginning and stages of whatever organization they're started. And a lot of times these organizations start from a very personal experience, right? Sometimes it's my sister had cancer, or my cousin committed suicide, or someone had, whatever. In your case, you witnessed something that, you've been through, and fellow military vets are suffering. And, in my case, I saw and heard about a child sleeping on the floor. I mean, these can be very personal attachments that they have to, that, let alone now you're attaching your family's livelihood, your personal livelihood, working, free time. There's no free time, right? You get home from work and go back to work, and I think it's important to point out that this stage of building takes a lot of sacrifice, right? And those, we have entrepreneurs and startup entrepreneurs listening to this podcast that need to understand these are the sacrifices that come with the job.
Man, I will tell you that's probably the most, like, and as this conversation goes on, I'm sure we'll get into that stuff, but as we get down the road in this conversation, I will tell you that that's probably the most personal thing for me, is the fact that a lot of people don't recognize that.
Yeah.
And when I transitioned out of there, dude, it wasn't acknowledged. And, even to the point now where, and again, I'm sure we'll get into this.
Sure.
I'll be on social media, and some of those guys there are like stealing my story and using it as their own. And dude, I get it, man. Like, people start things and they move on. That's just, it's life, dude. It happens. They grow or they don't grow, or sometimes because they're forced to grow down the road. But man, like, like, for me, man, like, it's like a kick in the nuts, dude. I'm just not gonna lie. Like, I mean, dude, as recent as a couple days ago, I'm on there just like scrolling LinkedIn, and a company is like, oh yeah, I just went out and visited this, and so mortgaged his house. Bitch, please. Well, I didn't have a house, like, and and then that's my initial reaction. And I sit back, I'm like, God dang, man, like, you steal that, like,
yeah.
There's a lot you can take from somebody, and then when you start doing that, dude, it hits home. And so, to your point, man, like, all of that sacrifice that goes into starting up a thing, it's very real, man. And one, I hope people listening understand that, to embrace it, to know that it's normal, and don't run from it, but also, make sure you value it, because, man, it's the best part. Like, sure, seeing a house go vertical is cool, but dude, all that stuff, and seeing my family rally behind something that I'm passionate about, and then they become passionate about it. Yeah. It becomes a part of your family, man. And I think I've told you this before, leaving there was like losing a family member.
Yeah.
Dude, it was hard. Like,
yeah. Well, you hit this stage called identity fusion, right? I mean, how many times through the years back when you were part of it that they said, hey, this is your baby.
Yeah.
Right? This is you. And now, I mean, well, back then for sure, how many people knew Chris Stout that didn't know VCP?
Nobody.
Exactly. Yeah. 99% of the people on this planet that know Luke only know me through my organization. Right. And if that is not identity fusion to the utmost, right, I don't know what it is. And isn't it interesting? Don't you think that you have to, in order for your organization to be successful, right, at some level anyways, you have to almost identity fuse with it, because it takes that much to make it grow?
I think you have to, but I also think it's natural. If you think back to all the hours, dude, when we were out there hustling, and before it was a thing, and you're telling the story, you're talking about the needs, the stats, like, it is all you eat, breathe, and drink for years. It's a thing. Like, dude, I talked to some folks, I'm like, listen, man, we don't have to talk about that. Like, let's just talk about life or whatever, right? Like, because they're so in that routine where they think that that's what people want to hear from them. And dude, and honestly, man, it's probably something that I struggle with a bit today. Dude, I turned 45 at the beginning of April, and Colin was in the car, and I was getting all these happy birthday things, right? From people that probably hadn't texted me, but from before. Or if they text me prior to my last birthday, it was because they needed something, right? Or they wanted whatever. And, Colin's like, oh, so they're not your friends? I go, well, dude, we're friendly, which is different than my actual friends. But most of those people, there's like 62 messages. I I would guarantee that I said there might be 3 that I've talked to since my last birthday. So he grabs my phone, starts looking, and he's like, "You're right." And he was like, "That's kind of sad." I go, "It's not sad, dude. It's just life, buddy."
Yeah.
But like I sit back and I think, I'm like, man, that's it, dude. And I was at a thing with my wife on Saturday. Some guy walked up, just started talking to me. Dude, I had no idea who this guy was.
Don't you love that?
And then he starts like, "Oh, how's the project going?" Right. And then triggers. I know him from VCP. And I just, "Oh yeah, it's going great." Just kind of very high level stuff. And then my wife's like, "Who is that?" I go, "Dude, I have no idea." I don't know. And it
happens a lot.
yeah, dude. And you know what it's like, dude. You meet all these people and then they know you for this. And then that's what they want to talk about. And for me, man, I'm finally at that stage where I'm so much more than the tiny house guy. I'm so much more, dude.
I want to talk about that too, because I think, Chris, a lot of when you identity fuse with your organization, and it's going to happen, right, at some level or not. You're right. Every conversation, every walk of life that you go through, no matter who you're talking to, that gets fit in somehow, somewhere, right? So you can't escape it. Even sometimes if you want to, not that you lose passion for your mission, but you can't escape it. Your family can't escape it. That's one of the hardest things I didn't plan on and realize, but does happen. I have remarried since, and my wife, got thrust into this world that she had no idea, right? It doesn't necessarily have the same passion as I do or other people, but it's thrust into our world because we're so identity fused with it. Yeah. And when this organization starts to grow, right, then, and that now what is evolving as an organization evolves much differently than us human beings, right? And I loved how you said it earlier. Listen, when we're just farm kids, right? We're just kids learning how to live through life, and then all of a sudden, right, out of nowhere, you get a camera thrown in your face. You get microphones. You're doing speeches that you didn't, plan on or feel like you were good at. You're telling stories, right? You're now responsible. This was a hard thing for me to learn. You're responsible to inspire, right? It's like if you don't, then all of this can fall apart. All of these veterans that you want to help and all these kids that I want to build beds for falls apart, right? So there's a lot of weight that gets put into this, and we're really passionate about it. But when we start seeing this evolution of our business and bringing in more management, bringing in more people, organization, and all of a sudden more board members, which requires more governance and more policies, and less hats come off our heads, right? Which is all a good thing. But then what I call the next stage, which is relevance wounds, we start getting stabbed, right? We got getting stabbed by these things I called relevance wounds. In your experience, like with VCP, what was probably the first? Can you think about the first time you really felt like, oh, I wasn't invited to the meeting feeling?
Yeah, dude, I can tell you, dude, it was right around the CNN hero stuff.
Really?
And yeah, dude, it was. Yeah, I would say up until that point, man. Like, and here's the other thing. Like, Kevin had started VCP with me. And then there's some other guys there, Brian, Brandon, and Mark, who Kevin and I hired. Like Brandon was our very first hire. Brian was our second hire, Mark. And they all felt like they're founders. Heck, I think they even call themselves founders now. Which, dude, that's also hurtful because it's like, dude, you found a job, like that's all you found. Yeah. And I know that's a bit harsh to say, but like, sure. You found a job and you found it early on, sure, but you found a job. Dude, I can tell you, that CNN Heroes thing. I think those guys took it personal because they weren't getting recognition, and I remember doing the interviews and stuff, and they were there and they wanted to get recognition, and it was funny because Kathleen was my person. She's like, well, really, the only person we need permission, like that they're good with this, is Kevin, because he's the actual founder. The other guys, it is what it is type thing. I mean, she was always polite about it. And they were bent out of shape. They weren't happy about it. They wanted to be included, and I get it, dude. You know, I do get it. But it was right after that, dude. Like, I remember I was traveling for something. I came back and didn't even know there was a board meeting. And I was like, yo, what? And they're like, oh, yeah, dude. Like, you know, the board had said at the previous meeting, which I was at, like, yeah, you need to start focusing on development and growth and all this other stuff and roll operations over, you know, to Brian. And so we were starting to make that shift. But at no point did I ever think, dude, I'm the CEO. At no point did I ever think I was not included from a board meeting. And so it was at that point where I really, I can tell you, it was like, man, okay, the hell, and started asking questions, and it snowballed from there. And I'm sure it was a combination of things, man, because at that time I was traveling a ton, dude. I was probably on the road 60-70% of the year. So I wasn't actually in the community or at the office in stuff. So from a rational standpoint, it made sense. Like, it made perfect sense that, hey, somebody else should be handling the operation stuff. It shouldn't be the guy that's never on site.
Right.
And then I think it snowballed from there. But that was the moment, man. It was the very first board meeting I wasn't included in. And I was like, okay, I get it.
What are some of the thoughts you had? I'm curious. Like, I mean, how did you feel like there was a sense of like push out type thing?
Yeah, dude, it
trail.
It was. I felt like I was being pushed out, dude. I felt betrayed. I remember going and talking to Brian and being like, dude, this messed up, dude. Like, how could you do it? And then, dude, slick lawyer talk, and you know, and I have my opinions about having attorneys on your team, and you know, whatever. But he, you know, he definitely explained it away. And then when it happened again, I remember talking to my wife and being like, yeah, this is bullshit. Like, there's nothing I can do, because there's this board that, regardless of the fact that I founded it and I am the CEO, there's this board that's actually in charge. And through this process, some of these folks that had probably aligned with me from the beginning have been changed out, you know, under the guise of needed for growth and all this other stuff. Right. And I was like, okay, it makes sense. Like, you know, I was trying to be that balance between growth and organization stability and trying to keep things good. And I remember, dude, more than one occasion I came home and I remember talking to my wife, just saying, God, man, I feel like they're leaving me out. They're not including me. And then, and you know, like, you know, Gina, who used to work for me, and they were excluding her from conversations because they knew that she would include me. That was even more hurtful, because I'm like, dude, she was my person. She worked for me, and I felt like it was my duty to make sure she was treated right. And, you know, so when she was back at HQ and I was off on the road or something and she'd be left out, they like stopped talking when she walked in, and it was this thing. Dude, it broke my heart for her, because she started as a volunteer and then started as like a $13 an hour team member, and then, you know, evolved into, and you know how great she is. So
she's amazing, everybody. She works for us now, and she's amazing.
Yeah. So she evolved into that, and just this incredible person, and they really crapped on her, and and it was really like having those conversations with her. I was like, okay, I saw the writing on the wall. I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. And
did you have anybody in your organization besides Gina, I would imagine, and your wife, anybody that you shared some of your feelings with and some of those frustrations?
Yeah, there was board members that, you know, I was like, hey, this is a problem, and you know, I'm concerned, and, you know, and generally speaking, I'd say all but one was like, hey, dude, it's just how organizations grow. We need it to grow. And then the one was like, yeah, something doesn't smell right. She's great. I still talk to her at least once a month. You know, I'd worked for her a long time ago. It was one of my first jobs out of the Army, working for her. So she was really like a business mentor, but she was the first one that's like, hey, this doesn't smell right. She's like, you should not trust Brian. The things that are going on, she goes, you're not going to land on your feet here. And I didn't think anything of it, man. And then they did, that evolved into like, just working there to an employment agreement that had all these rules and stipulations and what I thought were protections, but weren't necessarily protections. This very, disguised way of alienating me. And, but she was the only one. And, man, I remember I was at this leadership thing. I attended this George Bush.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me about this.
Very good program, man. Like, and they bring all these people that have led in these different capacities within the government and the veteran space. And I remember, dude, it was one night, and it was it was a little bit after the CNN hero stuff, because I got connected with that because my presenter, Lauren, she was like, yeah, you should check this out. And so I did, and I got in, and there was like the second or third session. I was up late, and I was down at the hotel bar, and it was probably like 2 a.m, and we're in Dallas, and Bob McDonald's there. He used to be the secretary of the VA, and like years ago, and he's like, why are you up? I was like, so we're just talking, and he's like, it was really him saying, it's time. Like, if you're feeling like it's time, it's just time. It's not going to feel good. You need to do it. He goes, it'll be better for you. It'll be better for your family, better for your mental health. He's like, we lose people all the time. And he really said that. He's like, and we make mistakes as we do it. And he, talked about some of his mistakes, and, and because he used to be the CEO of Johnson & Johnson. And like, so he talked about all these things. And it was at that moment, I'm like, okay, so I'm not going to just fade off into the ether if I leave here. Right. And, there's still life after it. And it was that conversation that probably really was a turning point where I'm like, okay, I'm done. It's time for me to start looking.
That's interesting. Was that a real fear of yours? I'm sitting here thinking of myself, right? You're so encapsulated in this mission. You're so involved. It literally from the very beginning becomes you. That's the identity fusion, right? And if that gets taken away for whatever reason, even if it was your own choice, right? Was that was a real fear of yours? Like, what now, right?
I had said that to more than one person. Like within our team. We'd had these conversations, and I was like, dude, you get to go be a lawyer when you leave here. You have an HVAC company when you leave here. You're a realtor when you leave here. Dude, this is it for me. I didn't have anything. I was some random dude with no building experience, built his first house off of YouTube videos, and then went and figured out how to become a GC, and then, went and learned all of this stuff. But I was just a guy that I had no college education. I was just a dude that served a couple years in the Army, got injured, and figured I could help people. And I had nothing I felt like at the time, I had nothing to fall back on, and I was so in it that I didn't see that, Jesus, man, there's going to be I had hundreds of people reaching out to me, teach me what you did at VCP. And they were going to pay me. And I'm like, oh, dude, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Like, I figured it, but I couldn't see it in the moment, man. And it was a thing. I talked about it with my wife. I remember talking about it with my mom, with people at work, dude. I was just like, I got nothing. If this doesn't, I got nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good feeling, man.
I can't imagine, and that's why I think sometimes when we experience these relevance wounds, right? When you're so into it, and all of a sudden, and the crazy thing, I don't know about you, but for some, it can be just a little phrase or a little, a side comment. Or I remember I experienced one not too long ago where we had a big event, right? There was media everywhere. There was interviews going on all the place. I was not even asked to be on one of those interviews. And here's the thing, it's like, I recognize how that sounds, right? Coming out of my mouth, it sounds arrogant. It sounds like, hey, this needs to be all about me and I want recognition. It really is not that. In fact, I'm quite happy. I was very happy that other people were getting recognized. And it is sometimes, man, you don't even want to be in front of the camera. But what you do want is to make sure the story is told correctly, to make sure that the passion and the mission, what we have been doing for 14 years, right, is told correctly, right? And even though it does, right, it's hard because you're so infused with it. It's hard not to combine the mission and this organization that they're going to be talking about with the founder and how it started, right? Because I think that is the baseline.
Well, you especially in the beginning, dude, when you do it, that's all anybody ever wants to talk to, the founder. Like, we can be like, here, talk 100%. To so-and-so. And they're like, well, we'll wait for the founder, right? It's it's a thing. And dude, for me, some of the things were like, I'd come to work or I'd hear something. I'd be like, dude, when did that happen? Like, I didn't know what was happening within my own organization. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, all right, that was kind of like another one of those, cuts, 1,000 cuts of a death or whatever they say that I was just like, geez, like, how do I not know? How did I not know we got a $250,000 check? Right. Like, why is that not something that we're talking about? Like, or why did nobody talk to me about it? And then, it's just back to that whole, they were that whole pushing out and keeping things and, that thing. But yeah, to your point, man, it wasn't something I learned until down the road that, for the interview, like the interviews thing, like I used to think I was the best person for it. Like, that's me. Because I know the story, I did, whatever. Just because somebody's telling it differently doesn't mean it's not right or accurate. But I didn't feel that until down the road, dude, like a couple years later. And I remember I'd made a comment like that, and Gina's like, gosh, she goes, hindsight's 2020. And like, she's like, you've really grown like as a leader in the space. And because, before I'd be like, oh yeah, they suck, or, whatever, like, can't pronounce their R's or whatever, I don't know, like, nitpick or whatever. Yes, for sure. Yeah. So, dude, I feel you, man.
And that isn't, what I'm learning, right? And I'm still a young pup, I think. I don't know. I'm older than you, but not by much. But but I'm sitting there thinking, isn't that part of leadership evolution, right? Isn't that part of how we as leaders, right, and need to understand, and all you new entrepreneurs out there that's listening, listen, some of the best advice I ever got, and very recently, actually, and I wish I got it back when I started, was, please understand your organization will not love you as much as you love it. And it's so true. It doesn't mean it's not great. It doesn't mean it's not going to be a part of you. In fact, that's some of the hard things. And what we're talking about is founder syndrome, because some of the hard things we have to deal with, we will always deal with it. Chris, you and I, we will never not be the founders of our organizations. That's a title that sticks with it, whether we like it or not, right? And so there will always be this experience that we have with relevance wounds, with dealing with monsters, dealing with this voice that's behind our head that sometimes tells us some really difficult things to deal with, right? So I think part of this leadership evolution that we go through is understanding how a business evolves, how people come in, how new policies come in. People can tell the story in a different way, and it's okay, and it's going to move the needle still the right direction, right? How have you? What steps did you take to, if you were like talking to yourself 3 or 4 years ago, when you're right in the middle of that pain and that frustration and worry, and what advice would you give yourself now?
Man, I was telling you before we hopped on this thing, man, I sit on a lot of boards, and I get asked a lot to sit on boards, and I'm pretty choosy about the organizations I opt in for that, right? You got to believe in the person that founded it or the guy that's leading it, right? And it's a thing I try to do today, man. I try to share with those folks is the same stuff. There's got to be some personal ownership. You can have a great idea and a great mission. It doesn't mean you're a great leader, right? And if I were to look back at me when I started VCP, I was not a great leader. Was I really good at connecting people? 100%. Did I get people that knew things that I didn't and get them to believe in me? 100%. Was I a good leader? Nope. Like understanding that because my level of passion is here and the people that come in is here, that's okay.
Yeah.
That is okay, as long as they're accomplishing their task. And I struggle with that. I always thought that we all had to be here. If you worked here, you were going to work till 2 a.m. because I was working till 2 a.m.
Oh yeah.
Like, dude, that first group of houses we built 13 houses in 30 days.
Wow.
The construction guys would leave from the normal day's work, and then we would go in and do like the sheetrock, the windows. Like we would move things along to expedite it. And anybody that's in construction knows that 13 houses in 30 days is a big deal on one property, because it's still 13 bathrooms, 13 kitchens, and 13 roofs, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then in January in Missouri, when, you know, the weather isn't really conducive to paint or mud and tape or whatever, right?
Sure.
You know, we got heaters going in these houses and the windows are melting because we're trying to heat them up so we could do the work. You know, but I remember I'd get off work and we would work till 2 in the morning. And then there would be guys like, listen, I gotta go get my kid. I'm like, okay, so you don't want to work here. Like, which is not a good leadership trait.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
But it wasn't a thing that I didn't learn until down the road, that it's okay. It is okay. You know, so if I could go back and tell myself some things, one, it would be better to people. You know, they're there because they believe in you, most likely, probably not even the mission. And to understand that and embrace that. Because, I mean, think about the people that started when you brought this on. Do you think that they got up in the morning and gave a crap about some kid having a bed? Probably not.
Probably not the same level.
Yeah. Not until sure, nobody wants a kid without a bed, but it wasn't affecting their day to day. Just like we drive by homeless people in Kansas City all the time.
Right.
They weren't losing sleep over it like I was. And that's okay, because they're there for something else. And it could be you as a person, like your relationship. And I that was a mark I missed early on, is understanding that people are probably there for me. And I took that for granted. I did not appreciate the fact that, you know, our first board was people that were very close to me and people that had really formed me, you know, from my time out of the Army on, and formed my family. Like, dude, I took it for granted. And if there's one piece of advice, is recognize that they're not going to be as passionate about your mission, but they're passionate about you. And don't leave. You got to take care of that, man. Like, it's a thing that I neglected it. It's like like a puppy I didn't feed, man. Like, I should have done better. And now I'm in a spot where I've been able to reconnect with a lot of those people and really have that conversation with them about being grateful that and acknowledging the fact that they probably didn't care about tiny houses, dude, or you know, or I was probably the only veteran they gave a crap about. Like, because I was probably the only one in their life. And I can see that now, and it's good to have those conversations. I can tell you that I'm so much closer with those folks now than I was back then. And I think that even after all these years, they really appreciate the fact that we're having those conversations, right? That I'm at that point where I can acknowledge the fact that it was probably me, probably not the other veterans, you know? So, and that's what I would tell.
Awesome.
I wish somebody would have told me, smacked me in the face and said, yo, time out. Look,
recognize. Recognize.
Yeah.
Dude, Chris, that's awesome. You know, hey, and thanks for sharing your story. Like, you know, I started this whole podcast for one purpose only, is because I know guys like you and I have talked for many years, and we know guys that are going through this right now and don't even know it. Right. And those are those are the souls that I really want to touch, because when you're in the middle of this founder syndrome, when you're in the middle of cruising along and your organization's going great and it's building and it's expanding and it's evolving and you're evolving too, and you start feeling and recognizing the distance that's now being created between you and something that you bore. I mean, you put your blood, sweat, finance, tears, family, the whole 9 yards online for, and it feels like a drift, right? How do we deal with that? How do we go through that? And I don't know about you. I mean, I looked everywhere. I was looking for therapy. I was doing anxiety medicine. I was doing all these things to try to understand and deal with the feelings that I didn't like. And then to come to find out that, no, it's a very real thing, and I slapped a label on it called, not me, but founder syndrome is a label that gets slapped on it that I like, because it is exactly that. It's a syndrome, right? It is something that we deal with, and no different than if, heaven forbid, our wife had cancer, right? And she's going through something. If we know what she's got, then we understand, and we can sympathize, and we can give her a little grace on the days that she's having a hard time. Whereas if you don't, and you don't know what's going on, then the reactions that they have can be viewed pretty poorly, right? And then us as the founders going through it, help us understand that, listen, you got stabbed, right? Boom, there's a little jab, death by 1,000 cuts, right? You got stabbed. It's okay to pause for a little bit. Pause before you protect. Realize that, and these are probably part of what I call the 5 disciplines of leadership evolution. Pause before you protect, and realize that less need doesn't mean less value in your own organization, right? As we wrap up, just some final thoughts, Chris, to those founders out there that might be suffering through this and starting to experience some of this drift, some of these feelings of pushed out or relevance wounds. What's some of the best advice you could give them?
Man, I would say, and especially after looking back, dude, I wasn't real great about reaching out. I mean, I had an incredible network, man. I had you guys. I didn't reach out to you guys till after it happened, right? It was a thing. I think naturally we want to protect it. We don't want people to know that we're struggling in this space. We also don't want to share that there's that rift in our organization and that this is a direction it's going. So there's a couple of things, man. I would say, one, reach out, connect with people. One of my biggest regrets that I did working there, Kevin, the guy that started with me, and honestly, man, how this all happened, Kevin and I were sitting at a table one day, filling out paperwork, and it came down to who had the money to open up the bank account and file the paperwork. I happened to be that. I was that guy, and so he's like, "All right, cool, you're the CEO." And,
oh yeah,
chief operations officer,
labels all over the place.
Yeah. So that's how that all evolved, right? And then fast forward, man, I was put in a position where he was the first one pushed out.
Wow.
And they leveraged me to do it because I was the CEO. And I remember calling, and that dude was my best friend. He still is my best friend.
Wow.
And even after what that happened. And I remember calling in, he was in my office and we're having this conversation. And then he just didn't work there. And dude, I look back and I'm like, man, I was horrible. And then I look back to how that happened, and I just didn't trust my gut, man. I was trying to be the guy for everybody and embracing these opinions and stuff, and I remember Brian was like, dude, he's got to go. And so I'm like, okay, we'll get him out of there. And so he left. And then, to say that he and I were good when that happened would be a lie. It took a few years for us to reconnect and have these conversations and acknowledge how we got to that point. So the piece of advice: 1, reach out to people. 2, trust your gut. You got to trust your gut.
Yeah.
Your gut's going to make you do things that doesn't feel good. But you just trust it. I'm going to tell you, and part of that whole trusting your gut is that it's followed by the reaching out. I guarantee, had I called you, you'd been like, dude, how the heck you gonna fire a founder? What the fuck is wrong with you? I guarantee you said that, right? Well, I called anybody, somebody, I would have had that voice, but I kept everything inside. I wanted to keep everything internalized, and because I thought that's what was best. And had I reached out to folks, I would have known better. Dude,
It's hard. The personalities that we are, and I think a lot of founders, especially successful founders, we're kind of an arrogant group, right? We are. Let's be real. Come on. And most CEOs, successful business owners, they have a little bit of I ain't gonna fail, and that's just the way it is. And it's funny you say that. I remember I was on a podcast a little while ago, and he asked me a very similar question. If you could go back, what would you wish you could teach yourself? And I sat and thought for a little bit, and I thought, you know what? I think the best thing I could do is go back and tell myself, after I kick my own ass, right? I'd tell myself, you don't know everything. You know what? And it's not a weakness that you admit you don't. So when someone comes across with whatever they're talking about and you don't know, don't act like you do. Ask a question, and it's okay, And I think that's really important and it's great information, and it's great advice. And Chris, you're a different dude. I mean, you really are. From the first day I met you to now, and we've talked about all the things that we've shared in common that help us get to these points, right? You can see it. I mean, you are a different person, and I applaud you for what you've done. And we can now look back, and the whole point of trying to understand founder syndrome, working through it, is so we can now build on legacy, right? And the beauty about building on legacy, especially as a founder, is no one else can. Right. This is our organization that we started, and even though we may not be a part of it, and trust me, I'm not going to be a part of mine in the future as well. And we're not going to live and die there, right? But we can build on the legacy of what that is, and I just hope we can help other founders, not lose that legacy or lose that insight, because there's a lot of guys that haven't been able to accept it, Chris, like you have, and like I'm learning, right, to be able to understand that, hey, there's life after this, right? Just like there was life before it.
Yeah, leaving there was the hardest thing I ever did. I would, and I will tell you that my wife would equate it the same way. It's we felt it was equal to losing a child. Mm-hmm. Like, that's how much it impacted not just me, but my family. Mm-hmm. And what I couldn't see in the moment was, to that point, like, it's always going to be my legacy. Like, I did that. Nobody can take that from me. Right. I look back now and I'm like, and it's probably because I've had some time to reflect and time to grow. Like, I've because of what we did there, I was able to take that and help so many other people. Mm-hmm. If I were still there, I'd still only have 100 tiny houses, right? But since I've left there, I just hit 1,000. I've helped build over 1,000 tiny homes in the United States.
Wow.
And I couldn't have done that there. So sure, that's where my legacy starts. Right. But everybody that goes into one of those houses that I assisted with, that's really my legacy. And I think when you're in the moment, it's like you don't see it. You're just like, oh, this is the only thing. Like it's like, dude, I don't know. You get your favorite car or whatever, and you're like, oh, don't park next to it, or I'm gonna park. You try to protect this thing that in reality, that's really not like
the point
for you.
Yeah,
it's not the number of beds you build, it's the people in those beds. That's your legacy.
Right.
And that one kid that sleeps in the bed, until they're a teenager, and then, or in a, whatever, goes into college and becomes a president or a senator or runs a Fortune 500 company. That's your legacy, dude. Like, impact that you're doing, you're providing people. And it's hard for me to remember that all the time, that, my legacy is more than VCP.
Yeah.
My legacy is the people that walked in and out of those doors, walked in a way and came out a different way. And I love watching these folks on social media, dude, I remember the first guys I housed, he now has a house and a lake home and his own trucking company. And dude had nothing and was fighting for custody of his kids when he came in there. And fast forward, that's my legacy. That dude rebuilt his family. He is, so I I would hope that people that are doing this understand that your legacy is much bigger than what you're doing today. It's the ripple effect. It's what you're doing today is going to transcend generations. Like that guy that got housed, his kids are never going to have to worry about houselessness, right? They're good. They likely will never have to serve in the military because they're going to be so financially prepared. Like, and so I look at like that is, you know, when I'm done here on this planet Earth, I hope that nobody shows up and it's like, hey, he built 1,000 houses. I hope it's the people that came into those houses that show up and are like, man, like this guy changed my life. Like, so that's, I don't know, man, when I look at legacy, and I hope that everybody that listens to this sees that your legacy is going to be what happens tomorrow. It's not what happens today. And if you walk away from it today, your legacy still is carrying on. And people might not say your name, and you might not be in front of a camera. You might not receive a check or whatever. You might not be a CNN hero, whatever. Your legacy, like the work you've done, is just this thing. And I think we get to this place where we forget how much that matters to people. Like, I mean, I think you get to see it in the initial thing, but you know, when you go back and talk to a kid that's had a bed for 2 months, see how they're thriving in school, whatever, right? That to me would be the win, man. That's the story.
Wow.
Like, so I don't know, man. That's just my opinion. I hope everybody takes that from this, is that your legacy doesn't end whenever you're doing that stuff. Your legacy is how you're serving people and how you're changing their lives.
Everybody, that's Chris Stout. Buddy, thanks for having me. Thanks for coming on, dude, and be willing to share. This is not this is pretty personal stuff, right? But it's very impactful. And trust me when I say there are many founders, CEOs, business leaders that are dealing with this, and to hear your story, and you can see the battles, you know, and the battle wounds sometimes of what you've went through, and to see where you're coming out now, Chris, is just awesome. I value you as a great friend. I'm so glad, and your legacy is not done for sure, right? But thank you for being on, bro. I'm going to be in Kansas City here pretty soon. I'll give you a call. We got some dinner to do. Yeah,
dude, we got some catching up, man. Thanks for having me, man. And you're the first person I've ever had that conversation with, like on where it's recorded, and so. And I think it's a testament to your character and, you know, the work you do and the person you are. So, man, I appreciate your friendship, and I'm blessed to have you in my life, man.
Thanks, brother. Thank you for joining me on the Leadership Evolution podcast. If something in today's conversation challenged you, stretched you, or made you think a little differently, that's the point. Growth always starts with awareness. And if you are struggling in your journey, if you feel like you are fading away from what you have built, visit my website, lukemickelson.com, and learn how you can take back your confidence and create lasting legacy. If you found value in this episode, please share it with another leader who may be in the middle of their own evolution. And remember, your role as a leader isn't just to build something successful. It's to build something that lasts. Build what outlives you.